Now, I don't know about y'all, but Shannon and I have owned a few homes. And in the process of owning homes, we've had neighbors. Any of y'all ever had neighbors next door? Y'all have had some neighbors, right? I've had some really awesome neighbors. Some people that I love to hang out with, some people that I enjoyed spending time with, some people with whom I became very close. And I've had some other kind of neighbors. I've had some neighbors that just aren't a whole lot of fun to be around if you ever saw them, and the only time you did see them is when they had something to complain about. You didn't mow your grass just right, or didn't mow it often enough, or you were encroaching on their property, or you didn't bring your garbage can down in time, or you weren't following the local covenants. Now, this is really bad. In our home in Marietta that we had a couple houses ago, we had all the mailboxes in the neighborhood matched each other, and they were made from 4x6 rough sawn cedar. You can't just go to Home Depot and pick up 4x6 rough sawn cedar. And being a bit of a perfectionist and one who either has to do it all the way or none of the way, at one point, that post having, believe it or not, cedar having been damaged by some insects, it had gotten wet enough that some insects were able to get in there, and they basically had sawed it off at the bottom. So basically what I had done was like dig the hole a little bigger, and what was left of it just stuck it down in the ground and just kind of sat there for, I don't know, a few months maybe. Now, nobody from the neighborhood called me, but in the newsletter that next month, it was suggested that in case anybody might be wondering where they could locate a new 4x6 mailbox post, that here was the address and the possible cost for said mailbox. I got up at 6 o'clock the next Saturday morning with my own piece of cedar and my loud power tools, and I made sure everybody knew that I was fixing my mailbox. I'm supposed to love those people. I'm supposed to be grateful for that newsletter article. Gee, I wonder who they might be talking about in there as you drive through the neighborhood. I'm going to tell you, that mailbox looked good when I got done. Back in concrete, solid as a rock. Hoped one of them would keep driving and run right into it. I've got to love them just like I love God. Now, there's another sermon for another day. It says we got to love our neighbors as we love ourselves. I'm assuming this morning that we love ourselves. The challenge is that's a whole nother sermon for another day. We've got to love ourselves and take care of ourselves. And so today, for the purpose of this sermon, we're assuming that we love ourselves and love our family. Now, not love ourselves in the can't get out in front of the mirror kind of love ourselves, but that we take care of ourselves and we are accepting God's plan for our life and becoming the people that God created us to be. That kind of self-love that leads us to a greater and deeper relationship with Jesus Christ. So what does this have to do with unity and being unified and to unite with each other in our community? What I began to realize was that it sounds so good. Those days following September 11, 2001, it was so easy for us to join hands with each other across lines of race and faith, socioeconomics. But it was too short-lived. Now, 9 years later, we find ourselves a country more divided maybe than we ever have been before. Along those very lines that have always separated us. Now, in case you're looking this morning for an answer to all this, you're not going to find it. Because here's the problem. There's too many people that have tried to answer that question of how we get there. And the answers, in my opinion, are always too easy, not thoroughly understood or well thought out. If we're going to figure out how to unite with each other in our community, it begins with us. And it requires a tremendous amount of work. So if we're going to unite with each other in our community, first of all, we've got to unite with each other. Here's the challenge. We can break it down as small as we want to. Some of us are not unified even with ourselves, that whole self-love ourselves. If we've not accepted God's plan for our life, or we don't know the direction we're heading, if we don't have a purpose about what we're doing, how can we be in unity with someone else? Because to be in unity means that we have to share a common cause and purpose. Our own families struggle to get along, to have peace. Churches are divided. Local churches are divided by issues of all kind and all sorts. And within denominations, we're divided along lines of polity and theology that's all mixed up by a bunch of bureaucracy. So if we're going to get right with each other in the world, in our community, we've got to get right with ourselves. We may have the most unique opportunity of any civilization ever, because part of what allows us to be the country that we have always been are the freedoms that we enjoy and share. Yesterday's memorial reminds us that freedom is not free. Freedom comes at a tremendous price. Our freedom as Christians came at the price of Christ's life. Our freedom as Americans have come on the lives of many young men and women who have left home never to return, and many others who have come home damaged by the work that they've been called and sent to do. In Paul's letter to the Galatians, he says this: "For you were called to freedom, brothers and sisters. Only do not use your freedom as an opportunity for self-indulgence, but through love become slaves to one another. For the whole law is summed up in a single commandment: you shall love your neighbor as yourself." Let me read that again. "For you were called to freedom, brothers and sisters. Only do not use your freedom as an opportunity for self-indulgence, but through love become slaves to one another. For the whole law is summed up in a single commandment: you shall love your neighbor as yourself." The freedom that we enjoy both as Christians and as Americans is a freedom not to be wasted on those things that we think freedom gives us. But rather, we have the freedom to give up a part of who we are that we might unite together, to become one. The symbols of unity in the church abound. Certainly, the cross is a symbol of unity that binds us together. Last week, we shared in the sacrament of Holy Communion the common cup that we come to, from which we all receive the sacrament, is a symbol of unity. The table from which that sacrament is served is a table, as I say when we celebrate communion, that doesn't belong to this church or the United Methodist Church. It's a table that belongs to God. Thus, all who are here are welcome to come and receive that sacrament. This table is a symbol of unity. I love to do weddings. Many weddings today will have the symbol of the unity candle. Now, the unity candle is kind of a funny thing, because the tradition began that you'd have the unity candle, and the mothers of the bride and the groom would come and light those two side candles. And early on in that tradition, the bride and groom would then come and light the middle candle, extinguish the side candles, and place them back in their holders. Well, there's some moms that just weren't real happy about that. They just went and blew me out. And so now, often when we have a wedding, we come and we light the side candles, and we light the middle candle, and we leave them all lit up. The reality is, in that symbolism, that one flame, that one light, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God, and nothing came into being that did not come through Him. He was the light of the world. And the darkness cannot overcome that one single flame of light. So regardless of the source of that light, whether it's 2 candles or 3 candles, the source of that light is Christ. And the source of our light in life is also Christ. And so part of being free and having freedom is having the freedom to give up part of who we are, that we might unite with each other. Because anyone that's ever been married understands that you give up part of who you are in marriage. Just ask anyone who's ever chosen toothpaste together or tried to determine which direction the toilet paper should go on the roll. You give up some of who you are. When we come together in church, we give up a little of who we are, because none of us every Sunday are going to like every hymn that's sung, and we're not going to like every sermon that's preached, and we're not going to always like everything that's done. But we come together in unity for a single purpose and a mission, which is to become the people God has created us to be, and thus become the church that God has created us to be. Now, here's the challenge. It's one thing to talk about Christian unity. It's one thing to talk about unity within our own community. The challenge that's before us today is, how do we find unity in our country and in our world? How do we reach across aisles that seem so broad and so deep? I don't know what the answer to that is, but I understand what Jesus is calling us to do. And I'll be honest with you, there's days when I'm just not real happy with Jesus for that. But our challenge this morning is to continue to find those ways that we might be of one mind with ourselves and God and with our families and in our churches and our denominations. And if we begin to do that, I think we will move in the right direction toward a time and place where we can be unified all together. Paul also writes to the church in Ephesus, I, therefore, the prisoner of the Lord, beg you to lead a life worthy of the calling to which you've been called, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing one another in love, making effort to maintain the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. For there is one body and one Spirit, just as you were called to the one hope of your calling, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is above all and through all and in all. We are one in Him who created us, who saves us and sustains us. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Our hymn of invitation and commitment this morning is hymn number 445, Happy the Home When God is There. As we stand to sing this final hymn, if you are here this morning and you would like to become a member of the Atlanta First United Methodist Church, I invite you to come down as we sing. Will you please stand together?